What if I told you that in most medical groups, the person in charge of your financial health might not fully understand half of your revenue? It sounds dramatic, but it's true. In countless physician practices and medical groups across the country, the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, is responsible for the organization's entire financial picture, except when it comes to the revenue cycle. That part? That's usually considered operations, or billing, or someone else's responsibility. The problem is, revenue cycle represents money in, the very top of the financial funnel. So if your CFO isn't actively overseeing how revenue is earned, coded, billed, collected, and followed up on, then who is? Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jill Arena. I began my career in accounting and finance, and I have more than 30 years of experience running medical groups. I own and operate a national healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company, and I am the author of Physician Heal Thy Financial Self. In 2020, I co-founded the Physician Leadership Project, and in 2025, I released Physician's Edge, the first of its kind CME-accredited online business education for physicians. My passion is to increase financial and business literacy for physicians. Episode 156. Who's really in charge of your money in? Hint: it's not who you think. What if I told you that in most medical groups, the person in charge of your financial health might not fully understand half of your revenue? It sounds dramatic, but it's true. In countless physician practices and medical groups across the country, the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, is responsible for the organization's entire financial picture, except when it comes to the revenue cycle. That part? That's usually considered operations, or billing, or someone else's responsibility. The problem is, revenue cycle represents money in, the very top of the financial funnel. So if your CFO isn't actively overseeing how revenue is earned, coded, billed, collected, and followed up on, then who is? And more importantly, what is it costing you? Today, we're going to explore the hidden but very real disconnect between finance and revenue cycle in many medical groups. We'll talk about how this structural divide came to be, what it costs you in real dollars, and what you can do to fix it. If you're a physician leader, an administrator, a CFO, or a board member, this episode is for you. Because it's time to bridge the gap and start treating revenue cycle as a core part of financial strategy. Let's start by talking about how we got here. In many medical groups, especially those with multiple locations, physician partners, or ties to health systems, the organizational chart looks like this. Finance is over here, handling budgets, forecasts, payroll, and reporting. Operations is over there, managing clinics, staffing. And somewhere in the middle, revenue cycle is sandwiched between them, frequently reporting up through operations, not finance. So what's the big deal? The issue is that this setup creates a knowledge and accountability gap. When revenue cycle reports up through operations and finance doesn't have full visibility or control, no one is fully accountable for the complete financial picture. Finance is responsible for financial performance, but they don't own the systems that drive revenue collection. Meanwhile, operations manages the revenue cycle team, but may not always understand how billing decisions affect the profit and loss, the cash flow, or strategic growth plans. And what happens in the gap? Revenue leakage, inefficiencies, missed follow-up, high denial rates, accounts receivable that gets too old, payer contract terms that get ignored, budget projections that are off because they're based on percents of billed charges, not actual net revenue. And through it all, leadership meetings where everyone agrees they need to, quote, improve collections, quote, but no one is quite sure how. This structure isn't just outdated, it's expensive. Let's put some real numbers to this. Say your practice collects $20 million a year. A 1% dip in collections is $200,000. If your net collection rate drops from 97 to 93%, and no one in leadership catches it for a full quarter, you've just lost $800,000. And most of the time, we shouldn't say that money was lost. It was billable. It was collectible. It just slipped through the cracks of an undermanaged revenue cycle process. It was forfeited for no good reason. It's easy to assume your revenue cycle is fine, especially if you're not hearing complaints. The revenue cycle isn't self-correcting. It requires active management. Denials won't fix themselves. Staff won't optimize workflows on their own. Payers won't suddenly become easier to work with. If no one is truly watching, the cracks only grow wider. And this is where the CFO comes in, or should. The job of a CFO is to steward the organization's financial resources. That includes capital planning, expense management, investment strategy, but it also includes revenue optimization. In fact, you could argue that half of the CFO's job is managing money out, and the other half is ensuring money in. But in too many groups, the CFO doesn't fully understand the revenue cycle process. They can tell you your EBITDA, but not your days in AR. They can walk you through expense trends, but not clean claim rates. They can forecast cash flow, but don't realize the billing team is working a month behind where they should be. And it's not because they're not smart. It's because medical billing is complex, nuanced, and often siloed in a different part of the organization. But if you're a CFO and you don't know what's happening in your billing department, you're operating with incomplete data. Revenue cycle isn't just a back-end function. It's the front door of your income stream. It's how services turn into revenue. It's the engine that drives sustainability. And it has to be managed with the same level of discipline, insight, and strategy as any other part of finance. Imagine running a business where the sales department didn't talk to the finance team. That would never happen in any other industry. But in healthcare, we've accepted a disconnect between billing and finance for far too long. It's time to rethink that. Let's talk about what it looks like to realign your financial leadership around the full picture, including revenue cycle. You're listening to Medical Money Matters, a weekly podcast brought to you by Healthy Practices, a healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company dedicated to keeping our clients independent. Please reach out if we can do anything at all to support your practice. You can find more information online at healtheps.com. That's www.healtheps.com. Please follow or subscribe to get all future episodes downloaded as soon as they're released. First, RCM needs to be integrated into the CFO's world. That doesn't always mean changing reporting lines overnight, but it does mean creating shared accountability. The CFO should meet regularly with the revenue cycle director. They should review shared KPIs. They should speak the same language when it comes to accounts receivable aging, denial rates, payer-specific issues, and cash lag times. Next, both finance and RCM need shared dashboards. Real-time visibility into key performance indicators like net collection rate, first pass resolution, clean claim rate, and denial trends should be part of every financial meeting, not just billing reviews. These are not back office numbers. They are strategic indicators of organizational health. Third, CFOs need to become fluent in billing, not just conceptually, but functionally too. That doesn't mean learning every CPT code. It means understanding the revenue cycle life cycle, charge capture, coding, claim submission, denial management, payment posting, patient collections. It means understanding how each step affects cash flow. And it means knowing where to dig deeper when something looks off. This matters more now than ever. Payers are more aggressive. Denials are up. Patient balances are harder to collect. The revenue environment is tightening. You can't afford for your finance team to be out of sync with your billing team. And if you're using a third-party billing vendor, the disconnect risk is even higher. Outsourcing doesn't mean you can abdicate oversight. In fact, it demands more intentional monitoring. CFOs should be involved in vendor selection, contract terms, performance reviews, and escalation protocols. Because your billing vendor is now part of your revenue infrastructure, and finance must treat them as such. So, what does tightening up your revenue cycle oversight actually look like? It starts with assessment. Conduct a revenue cycle audit internally or with outside help. Don't just look at whether claims are being sent. Look at denial root causes. Look at aged AR. Look at lag times from the date of service to claim submission. Look at where your dollars are getting stuck or delayed. Delayed dollars are not a good thing. Next, align your KPIs. Establish shared metrics between finance and RCM. Review them together monthly. Ask questions like, what's our net collection rate this month? What percentage of claims are being denied and why? How fast are we resolving rejections? What is our clean claim rate? Then, build a feedback loop. If denials are increasing for a certain payer or service line, that should inform both finance forecasts and operational decisions. If collections on patient balances are falling, that should influence front desk scripts, portal workflows, and follow-up timing. Train your teams together. Bring financial literacy to your RCM staff and billing awareness to your finance team. Cross-pollinate knowledge. The more each side understands the other's goals and pressures, the more effective they'll be as a unified team. Finally, invest in the right tools. Dashboards, analytics platforms, and revenue integrity tools are not optional anymore. They're how you get proactive instead of reactive, and they should be usable by both finance and RCM, not separated in siloed systems. Now, let's zoom out, because this isn't just a CFO problem. It's a leadership problem. And physician owners, boards, and executives have a critical role to play. If you are a physician owner, you should be asking questions like, how closely are finance and revenue cycle working together? Are we getting the data we need to make solid decisions? Who is accountable for revenue performance, start to finish? If you're an executive leader, your job is to break down the silos, create structures where finance, operations, and RCM work collaboratively, reward shared success, align goals, make revenue transparency a cultural norm. Because here's the truth, the traditional model doesn't work anymore. The world of healthcare finance has changed. Margins are tighter, complexity is higher. If you want to grow, or in some cases even just survive, you need a leadership model that understands every dollar from the moment a service is provided to the moment it hits your bank account. And that means bridging the gap. If your CFO isn't fluent in revenue cycle, make that a development priority. If your RCM director isn't connected to strategic finance discussions, bring him or her in. If your leadership team isn't reviewing revenue cycle performance as a core part of financial meetings, change the agenda. Revenue cycle is not a back office function. It is a strategic asset. And when it's integrated with finance, the entire organization performs better. Let's recap. Most medical groups suffer from a fundamental disconnect between finance and revenue cycle. That disconnect leads to lost revenue, missed opportunities, poor visibility, and avoidable inefficiencies. It happens because RCM often reports to operations, and CFOs often lack deep billing expertise. But that can change. CFOs can and must take ownership of the entire financial funnel, including revenue. Revenue cycle leaders must be brought into financial planning and forecasting. Metrics must be shared. Meetings must be integrated. Goals must be aligned. When you do this, your organization gets stronger. Your forecasts get more accurate. Your collections improve. Your cash flow stabilizes. And your leadership team becomes a true financial engine, not just an expense manager. So here's your call to action. If you're a CFO, get curious. Learn the revenue cycle. Sit with your billing team. Ask to see denials. Understand where your money is coming from and where it's getting stuck. If you're a physician leader, demand integration. Don't accept silos. Ask for transparency, accountability, and unified financial reporting. If you are an executive, lead the change. Redesign your org chart if needed. Realign your teams. Invest in tools, training, and culture. Revenue cycle is half the CFO's job. It's time we start treating it that way. Thanks for being here today. If this sparked questions for you, or if you're wondering how your group stacks up, reach out. Let's talk about how to bring finance and revenue cycle back together where they belong. At Healthy Practices, we love to bridge this gap, and we're delighted to assist with a revenue cycle assessment or some one-on-one coaching for your CFO or your revenue cycle director. Because your revenue deserves a leadership team that sees the whole picture and leads like it. Until next time. You can find more information online at medicalmoneymatterspodcast.com, and you can sign up to be notified when enrollment opens for the Medical Money Matters e-learning program for a mini MBA physician style, which will carry CME credits and will be released in upcoming months. In that, we'll do an even deeper dive so you can understand dynamic budgeting strategies, cash flow forecasting, and other more esoteric financial concepts. We've included those links in the show notes. As I like to close out these podcasts, congratulations on taking the next step in your professional development and for making the commitment to learn about the financial and business aspects of your practice. I look forward to being on this journey with you and send you my heartfelt gratitude for all that you do for your patients all day, every day.